Welcome to Let's Dad This, a podcast by two bros just trying to dad their best. All are welcome here. Dads, moms, children, dog parents, plant parents, and everything in between.
I'm Jason. I'm the older brother. I'm a dad of three, and I'm an uncle of several.
And I'm Adam. I'm the younger brother. I am a dad of one 2 month old now and an uncle of more.
We've been brothers nearly my entire life,
And all of mine.
and I have been a father for nearly 14 years.
And I buried the lead in saying I've been a dad for 2 months. Actually, at time of recording, Wren is 9 weeks old now, so she's basically an adult and ready to contribute to the world.
He already contributes more than some do. Every episode, we'll dive into some little baby topics and one big baby main topic, sharing our perspectives as a seasoned and brand new dad, respectively. And before we dive into all of that, uh, how's it going? I asked that exact question last time, but I feel like it's relevant every time.
Yeah, it's going good. The funniest thing on my mind right now is realizing that I put all these episodes on YouTube, and the beginning will look dramatically different than the second half of the episode because we recorded them at separate times of the day and also separate days. But it's good. We're gonna get into our little topic in a little bit here, but Wren had her 2 month visit, and she's in the 90th percentile for height, weight, and head size. So, as the doctor said, very symmetrical.
Wait, so she went from 86th percentile for head to 90th percentile in a month?
I get it that her head grows, but it is very funny to think about. I was actually looking at a photo today because Alex, my partner, sent a photo from downstairs of her sleeping in her previously mentioned dog bed. Dakata was the one you had, and I can never remember the actual name of ours. But she is almost over like extending her body past both sides of it. And then I found the photo that I shared with our siblings of her when we first brought her home, and how she's just right in the middle of it. She's grown, I think, 4 inches in a little over a month and a half, and yeah, put on 4 or 5 pounds, and then but also her head grew, which is the funniest part.
That seems bananas. And also, I keep just picturing Buddy the Elf on his bed.
That's kind of what she looks like. And also, this wasn't gonna be any of our topics, but do you remember when your kiddos were still bottle feeding or breastfeeding, and how they kind of out of nowhere go from every meal is 2 to 3 ounces to out of nowhere. Now her nighttime bottle is 8 ounces, and she usually takes most of it. And it feels like that's the most dramatic thing that has changed is yes, she's getting bigger, and you notice that only in photos because you see them every day. But one day we were let's give her 5 ounces, and she was still real fussy and realizing oh no, she's drinking 8 ounces at night now. That is wild to me.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember it as much because, admittedly, Eliza and Sky both nursed pretty much exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't really tell how much they're drinking other than the duration. So is this getting longer? Are they drinking off both sides? But I will say that there was definitely a point where when I was doing the feedings, are you guys using the bags or?
No, we have, I mean, they're we have bottles. What do you mean by bags?
Okay, so when Jess would pump, she'd pump into the little bottle that was attached to the pump itself, or she had a willow pump for a while, which is portable, but then we'd pour it into a bag so we could freeze it.
Okay, yes, so we do two things. We do the pitcher method, so you basically pour, you have to know when you start adding milk to the pitcher, but then you can add milk for 2 days, and you just kind of keep it mixed up. But we are freezing milk because we'll get to this in a second before I'll let you finish your point. But we are freezing milk because Alex is an oversupplier, and we've been donating a hilarious amount. But anyway, sorry, continue.
First of all, that's awesome and so helpful for so many kids. So if you are able, as a mom, to donate, amazing, and kudos, sister-in-law, for doing that. Uh, I brought it up because what the thing I did notice is that the bags would have 3 to 4 ounces generally. Some would have more, some would have a little bit less, depending on pumping schedule or like did Jess pump that right after one of the kids ate. And I did notice that like at a certain point it was like, okay, I can just do one bag of 2 to 3 ounces or 3 to 4 ounces, and like all of a sudden it's like, well, no, now I need to thaw 2 bags and fill up this bottle entirely. And it does happen way quicker than you'd expect.
Yeah, it's crazy. I will say like the funny thing is because we're like Alex is pumping and like she'll nurse sometimes, but basically usually she pumps and we take the pumped milk and pour that into bottles so that we can both do feedings. The funniest thing is like the bottles that you first get when your babies are newborn, I think they basically have like 5 ounces that you can fill. Like the notches I think go to 4 ounces, but you can put more in them. We had to get new bottles for the nighttime feed because she was like, it just didn't make sense to fill up 2 bottles. So the all of a sudden the bottle that is like it's like a 12-ounce bottle, and there's something like even though Wren is big for a 9-week-old baby, there's something hysterical about holding a bottle where like if you're watching this on YouTube, it's like the size of my microphone. So every time I FaceTime our mom, and like you basically can't even see Wren's face because the bottle is just like encapsulating her. But to put in perspective, if there are any moms listening, like this is just like something I know it's every body is different, and like I don't there's nothing like that you can really do that I know of that like could make this happen. But when I say Alex is like an oversupplier, like every time she pumps, it's usually like at least 12 ounces, which is insane. And then she gave we have a friend who's has a daughter who's just a couple months older than Wren, and she wanted to start like phasing out of breastfeeding. And so Alex was like, "Do you want some milk? Like, this may sound awkward, but like we have some frozen if you would like." And she was like, "Absolutely." So I think Alex gave her 180 ounces, and then she
Wow.
donated to the Ohio Milk Bank, I think like another 150. And our freezer is already getting full again. Like you said, if people can do it, I will say it's a bit of a process. You have to like get your blood work taken care of. You have to get like everything signed off by the pediatrician and your OBGYN because obviously they're going to be giving this milk to other babies. They need to make sure you're healthy. So it's a bit of a process, but it is so worth it. Like it was the coolest thing to be going to our pediatrician's appointment because that's where the milk bank is for us, and being able to be like, "Hey, we're donating milk," and they were like, "How much?" And she's like 150 ounces, and like watching their face, and then being like, are you going to be able to donate more? Do you need more bags? And Alex being like, "Yeah, we're going to need more bags." So it is super cool, and I'm like so proud of her, and it's very gratifying to get to watch her to do that. Anyway, this is all to say, Red's bottles are gigantic now for nighttime, and it is the funniest thing in the world to me.
That is funny. I love the different sizes of things as kids grow, and it really is a marker of how they do grow. It just in relation to things. It's like the pictures you sent in our group chat this morning. It's bananas. When you did your 2 month appointment, did you do a group or did you do a solo?
So it was just solo. So great point for people who didn't listen to previous episodes. Go back and listen. Ren's 1 month appointment was a group appointment, so we got to like interact with other people on the exact same moment in life with their newborns. That just because of the timing, it didn't work out. So she was by herself with our pediatrician, who we love. She did have to get her vaccines, and we learned what the purple cry is. And for people who aren't familiar, it's when your baby cries so hard that they look purple. I guess we're doing a good job at parenting because we haven't seen that before her getting shots, but oof, nothing prepares you for how hard your baby screams when they get shots in both legs. But yeah, it was a solo one.
Yeah, I think sometimes when they get those vaccines, it's preferable to have it be a solo one because you don't want the other babies to hear your baby scream as if they're gonna
As
equate
if they
what's going
know.
on, which they can't, obviously, but maybe that's not obvious. That's interesting. We didn't have any doctor stuff over the last couple weeks. It's been about a month now since we've recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but we did have a start to spring soccer We had Sky's first ever T-ball practice, which was just yesterday. And then we had Eliza randomly wanted to do wanted to climb a rock wall. And so she actually has a 30-day pass to our local Dick's Sporting Goods to climb the rock wall, which was a random thing that we got ourselves into the other day, which speaks to one of our little baby topics today, which we can get into in a second. But we should have probably stipulated at the outset before I jumped right into our banter section. But as part of our housekeeping, today is the first episode that we have a guest,
Mm-hmm.
our old friend Pat, who's going to tell his labor and delivery story, and that's going to kind of end our initial segment of talking about labor and delivery stories as our common theme, and then we'll jump into the next common theme for the month of May, which I'll let you talk through.
Yeah. So for the month of May, and honestly probably into June as well, given how crammed we brothers' schedules are, we want to talk about mental health because for you who may not be aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's a time where you should talk about your mental health all year round, but it's a really great moment to kind of shine a light on it and talk about it. So we're going to try and do some interviews with some family members and friends about mental health from a parent standpoint, and then also we'll talk about our own experiences with it. I believe at the time of recording we are still both in therapy. I mean, I know I am. I don't need to guess if I am or not. But yeah, we'll talk about the mental part of this because it's hard. It's such a unique experience. It's amazing and it's wonderful, but there's lots of parts where figuring out how to prioritize both yourself and your relationship and your own brain, and when you don't even feel like you have a moment's notice. And this is just me saying this with just one 9-week-old, let alone Jay having 3 kids who are, as we said, very, very active, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. So that is really excited for you guys to hear Pat's story in just a little bit here after we talk about our little baby topic. But yeah, we're then going to transition into the mental aspect as a parent. So let's talk about the kids getting more active, which is our widow baby topic today. And since you started talking about yours, I want you to start because your kids are obviously much more active than mine are now. How has that experience been with? Let's start with Sky's practices and then Eliza. I want to hear more about the rock climbing.
I think you know that as you add more kids to your family, that things don't just get harder by a factor of 1, they get exponentially more difficult. What's been interesting to me, or for me and Jess, has been to experience that essentially in real time. I do a lot of different things. I'm currently training for a marathon. During the winter, I coach basketball. Jess goes to yoga a couple times a week. We both prioritize fitness. She started going to a book club, and I'm so proud of her for that because she's really trying to find what activities resonate with her and where she can find her people that aren't just little kids or her coworkers or me for that matter. And so she's really leaning into that. And that's just what we do. But then in addition, as I said, Lily did cross country in the fall. Sky does soccer and baseball. Eliza does dance and it's competition, so it's pretty intense. And she does gymnastics. And she'll do cheer in a couple months here. So there's just a lot of things going on, and all of these stack on top of themselves. And so we're playing this logistical game that we never expected to play of, okay, we've got mommy-daughter yoga at 9:30 on Saturday, but we have Sky's Sky's soccer at 10, but we have Eliza's dance competition at noon. And how are we going to get all the kids to these various places? In the fall, it was also, you added the layer of okay, we had soccer, potentially we had dance, and we also had Lily's cross country. So 3 activities, 2 parents, and you're like, how are we going to make this happen? And it's just been an interesting transition to try to figure all these things out logistically. It adds stress to the parental relationship where you're trying to not argue with your spouse about how do we get people to certain places. You find yourself rushing around, and one thing we've tried to be really intentional about lately is not putting our stress of are we going to be late to something onto the kids and making them feel that anxiety, because ultimately who cares if I drop Eliza off even late at school one day? who cares? I just walk you to the office and you go to class. By missing 5 minutes, you're not fundamentally missing anything. Other than setting that expectation of we want to be places on time to be respectful of the people that are running those.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all of these various pieces of the puzzle have just been a little bit chaotic in my brain lately, and it's been something to adjust. And I will say this, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but our old friend from high school, Chad Cutting, is putting together an app for exactly this problem called Game Plan with an AI instead of an ME, so GAIM plan. And I'm really excited to see what that turns into because I think he's essentially trying to help solve this challenge for parents. And Chad, if you want to sponsor our podcast, of course, please, you're welcome to be an initial sponsor.
Anytime you can get an AI startup who's probably still looking for funding to try and sponsor your podcast, you got to do it.
Exactly right. We're bootstrapped too, Chad. We're bootstrapped too.
That's true. I don't even have boots. I'm in socks.
Slippers for me.
Yeah. So I want to ask before I talk about my version of this. It's awesome that you guys are prioritizing all these things. But when you are just from a logistical standpoint, when you have 3 things and 2 parents, how do you guys prioritize? Like you said, I think the not worrying about being late to things is so crucial because you're ultimately if it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. It's, it's not the military. It's okay if you're a little bit late. But how else, what other ways are you guys understanding and prioritizing? You can't be in 3 places as 2 people.
First and foremost, we're really blessed because we've got an amazing support system. So even if we can't make it to one of these activities, we almost always have somebody that can. And whether that's for the purpose of actually dropping them off or taking them somewhere, or whether it's just they will have somebody there to cheer them on when they're at their activity, we generally always have something like that. We've been fortunate that I think to this point we've always been able to figure it out. So it might be I have to drop Lily, who's going to be 14, off a little bit early somewhere, and she can manage that because she's a little bit older. It might be that we're picking up somebody a little later or making arrangements to have somebody pick them up on our behalf. We've always been able to figure it out to this point. And then the other piece is how do we prioritize the time? If it's something that's for me and something I want to do, or it's something for me that I can rearrange, or I just have to miss, if I have to miss a basketball practice or something, for example, then that just is what it is. But we have to do right by the kids first. And since we've been looking at it with that lens and with the help of our amazing support system, our parents, Jess's parents, you and my other siblings and your respective spouses, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Jess's brother, we've always been able to get somebody where they need to be so that everybody feels supported. So we're lucky, but I know it's not like that for every parent.
And it's interesting in a different way with a 9-week-old is they talk about the first 8 weeks or the newborn phase, and then they're so Wren's officially not a newborn anymore, which I'm not sad about. I'm excited that she's becoming a little tiny, she's interacting with the world more. And so from an activity standpoint, obviously she's not climbing rock walls just yet, but she's spending much more time. Her wake windows are much longer. And now I work full time and Alex is focusing on Wren right now as she's working on building out a really cool, project that she's super passionate about that I will talk about more in future episodes. She's kind of finding stuff that she's really bringing her joy, but it's been this interesting moment where I'm working full time. I usually am working from 8:45 till usually 5:30. Alex is amazing, so she asks me every day how do I want to prioritize my health? How do I want to move my body today? So I always she makes sure I have time to go for a run or go to the gym, which is awesome. But it's also finding ways I want to make sure I have time with Wren because realistically, by 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, we are putting her to bed, going through the bath routine and everything. And so throughout the day, I've been wrestling with this guilt of I work from home, which is amazing. And so when I'm not in meetings, I can go and at least see her for a minute and hang out. But when I am in meetings, I'll hear her getting fussy and being super active and not be able to go give Alex a helping hand or at least give her a moment. And we're still working through finding ways we had a conversation this week, Alex and I, about okay, we're going to figure out a one specific night of the week where it's Alex's night, like to go do yoga or like just be, whatever it is. Like she's in a book club. She has a wonderful support group of friends, but also like I want to make sure it's not fair to her in my mind that she prioritizes giving me a break from work every day. So it is really interesting as you watch, like Wren is much, she clearly can see us now. Like we stick our tongue out at her and like she'll do it back at us. Like she's starting to learn little tricks, as we call it, because we jokingly call her our third puppy. But like it is interesting how all of a sudden they go from being this thing where you're like, wow, this little potato is just constantly sleeping, to now like she's still sleeping a lot, but she has these like moments where we can tell like she's being more active, and therefore we can tell that she's got to be crabby or like, so it's now that she is more active, finding ways like, okay, can we, like, what types of tummy time can we do to like make her interact with the world, or like where can we take her? So it's an interesting adjustment watching your little tiny potato turn into a much more aware potato.
Yeah, and I think this is a really neat piece of looking into the window for non-parents or for parents that haven't gone through different phases yet, to see like all four kids between the two of us have some new activity going on. I didn't even mention Lily has a boyfriend now, so that's another thing. But it's some level of new activity, which does lead to some anxiety and some stress and some having to make more decisions, which is always super pleasant for everybody. It's like more decisions, more decisions, more decisions. It seems like that's what life turns into, and then you get decision fatigue and that stresses you. But I think the important thing is to not get lost in all of the stress of feeling like you're rushing around and am I missing something or not, and enjoying the actual moments that you have, like enjoying that Lily seems happy because she's got this person that she really likes talking to and seeing. Watching Liz climb the rock wall, which I didn't talk about, but we can offline that. Or I can talk about it here.
No, I was just going to say, I want you to finish your point here, but before we get to our interview part, I do want you to talk about the rock climbing thing. So briefly, unless you have to go and we're running over, either way.
No, fair enough. So Lily with the boyfriend, Eliza with the rock wall, plus the dance, plus the gymnastics, Sky with the soccer and the t-ball. I think it's just important to not get lost in the anxiety and the stress of it, and also remember that in each phase of their activity, in each phase of Wren's development as she goes from potato to moving around, that does lead to stress, but it also brings you this immense joy and pride in looking at your kid in a certain way and just being present in that moment. Because again, like I know for me, I can be a little high strung about it and on edge, and Jess called me on it yesterday, and I appreciate that she did that. But once you get there, like, be in the moment and just enjoy it as best you can.
Yeah, I love that. All right, really quick before we jump to Pat, like 90 seconds on this rock wall.
Not even. So we went to Dick's Sporting Goods. There's a new huge Dick's Sporting Goods in our area. I told Sky he got hurt the other night. He was struggling to go to sleep. I'm like, listen, like we'll go to the new sports store and you can walk around and see what they have, and it's just exciting. He doesn't necessarily need to get something, but he just likes to go to the place. And when we get there, so we took Eliza, Jess came with us, and the first thing she sees is this huge rock wall, which she has never had any interest in climbing before, but she sees it through the window. She's like, I'm going to climb that. And of course, like anxiety for me immediately, but want to foster that. So I didn't say anything. We went in there. She said, yes, I want to do this. She was a little nervous, but she was being very brave. The guy at the place was $15 for 15 minutes. He was great. He helped her get comfortable. He helped her learn how to like jump off of the wall. She ended up climbing maybe like 6 or 7 feet high, so not super high. But for her, as a first time ever doing this, we were really proud. And the guy, said, she started to do much better, like learning to fall, and it was okay. Like she knew that she wasn't going to get hurt, and the rope was going to catch her, and then the floor was super soft. He said it's $15 for the 15 minutes. If you want, we can make that $15 go towards a monthly pass, which is only 25, so $10 more. And she'll get 45 minutes every time she comes instead of 15, and you get as many times as you want to come for 30 days. So she's going to go back again today, and we'll see what this turns into. Also, that Dick's Sporting Goods has a batting cage, $15 for 15 minutes. So if they've got a similar deal, $25 for like all you can bat, I'm sure we'll end up doing that.
All right, we're gonna offline this. We do have to go, but I have more questions about this specifically for me and you, not for the podcast. So we're gonna. That's amazing. That's so cool. Great job, Lizzie. I'm so proud of you. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, one of Jay's and my very old friends, Pat, is gonna tell you his pretty harrowing but incredible story about the birth of his children. So we will be right back.
Welcome back. Great bump music there. We are really, really excited to have our first ever guest on Let's Dad This. He's our, I hasten to say old, but our longtime friend, Pat Sullivan. We go back. We go back, and he had a very unique experience with his firstborn, who's actually like just about 2 months to the day younger than Lily. And so he and his wife went through something, and we would love to have him share that story. But Pat, before we get into that, why don't you just say a little bit about yourself, who you are as a person, why you love our podcast so much, whatever you feel is relevant. And then probably because of the nature of this podcast, also talk a little bit about your boys.
Sure. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's great and honored to be your first guest. Such a prestigious podcast with sponsors like Dave's Cosmic Subs and Mitchell's Homemade Ice Cream. So,
A listener.
A
come on, I know it
long-time
all.
listener.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Oh man, incredible.
No, thanks for having me. Yeah, almost 2 decades, I think we're going back, Jay,
We are.
to the mid 2000s here. So, yeah, born and raised in Cleveland. Kind of trying to represent here with my Cleveland State shirt on.
Yeah.
Um, have been in Texas for the last, 6, 7 years now. That's crazy. Um, Me and Rosalie, 15 years marriage this summer, and we have two boys, Eamon, who's 13, and Declan, who's 11, but they'll both age this year, so 14 and 12 soon.
Nope. Thank you for clarifying that
Aging,
your
yes.
children will age this year. That's really good to know.
They haven't already aged this year. They're going to age later.
Listen, I'm very new at this, so it's actually I didn't know that. That's interesting that they do. They
Absolutely.
don't just stay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me write that down.
Yes.
They
every year.
age. Interesting.
Yes.
Cool.
Also, just a seasoned dad tip to a new dad. If you put your children's birthdays in your calendar on your phone, it will tell you so you never forget.
That's a good note. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will remember how. If I then I have to remember to put the note in, and at that point, why don't I just remember the birthday?
I mean, you only have to put the birthday in one time, and then that thing, like clockwork, literally like clockwork, comes back around for you.
Yeah,
Like the aging thing.
just like the aging thing. Holy cow! Now let me just so I'm clear. At the birthday, do they just is it like a Mario thing where they eat a mushroom and they get a little bit bigger? Is that how it works? I'm very new at this.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's a good question too. I'm so glad you asked it. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
To try to get this thing back on the rails.
Yeah, back on the wheel. Yeah.
More fun.
Unbelievable.
So, a couple weeks ago, you, as our listeners, heard Adam's story and Alex's story of labor and delivery of Wren May. And on the last episode, I shared the story of both of our younger two kids. And, we had some complications. There were some complications when Wren was born, but nothing really stacks up to what you guys went through when Rosalie was pregnant with Eamon. So to the extent you're comfortable talking about it, can you just share that story for our listeners?
Absolutely happy to. It was, and thinking about it a little bit coming into this, it sounds crazier in my head maybe, but thinking back, it really wasn't that eventful, I guess. But we could get into that when I talk about it. But yeah, so Rosalie and I found out she was pregnant back in 2011. We were super excited, and Eamon was scheduled to due in September. And the first half of the pregnancy went totally normal. I don't even know if I told you guys this story. This is the craziest part to me. But so we went in for the 20-week checkup, all the fun stuff, pictures of the baby. You could find out the sex. Super excited. And we found out at that there was a little spot on his heart. And the doctor came in and did more looks. And he's like, well, this could be a soft marker for some birth defects. We're going to do some blood work, and then we're going to do a follow-up ultrasound in 6 weeks. So we left there and had to kind of pretend like, oh, we're super excited, it's a boy, like all this, and we didn't really tell anybody about like this marker found until we, we're going to see where it led. Um, they did the blood work, and Rosalie's chances of having any, or Eamon having any kind of defects or complications, the chances were so small that we were like, okay, cool. It was just a blip, like the doctor said, no problem. And we were going to blow off the 26-week ultrasound, and Ro was going to come to Texas with me on a work trip, and because it was probably the last time that she could travel, getting closer to the third trimester. Work trip gets canceled. We had never canceled the doctor's appointment, so we're like, hey, more pictures of the baby. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
We go. The nurse is doing her thing, and she starts looking weird, and then she's like, I'll be back. We have to do an internal. And I'm like, okay. And Rosalie like went white. She's like, this isn't normal. And turns
Can
out
I
that
just
Rosalie was.
interject?
Oh, wait.
Sorry,
Yeah.
at the time, Rosalie was a medical assistant, right? So she knew a little bit about
Yes.
the process, and just trying to
Yeah,
remember.
absolutely. Yeah, so she was well aware and way smarter than me in this as well as many things in life, but this one super more smarter. So the doctor came in, also did an internal, and said that you are dilated and your sac is hanging, your embryonic sac is hanging out of your cervix, and this was at 26 weeks. And I'm like, okay, so what do we do? And he's like, well, she goes upstairs and doesn't go home until the baby is born, and we're just going to try to keep him in as long as we can. And we're like, what? So, kind of a whirlwind day and a half there, as they put her into the high risk area and started pumping her full of medicine because she was starting to contract now. I think maybe nerves and all this. She was in labor, and they were like, you didn't feel any pressure? And she's like, well, I did, but I'm pregnant. I don't know what's normal. This is my first pregnancy. So basically, they had her on monitors, monitoring her contractions and pumping her full of medicine, trying to stop and keep them in. And then they just start pumping her full of steroids now to try to develop his lungs to the best that they can. So when they're basically saying he's coming early, we just don't know when.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the whole this is how we found out was insane to me. Like we're going to cancel the trip, and what if this would have happened like on the plane or in Texas? And it still scares me to this day when I like think about it like that.
So okay, so that's at 26 weeks. You literally go upstairs. When did he actually arrive? Like, was it like, oh, like when you say he's coming early, like that's a Tuesday, he's coming on Wednesday,
Yeah.
or like did they
Wait,
like?
so yeah, I'm looking at my phone like, baby's born at 26 weeks, baby's born at 27 weeks, because that's what I thought. And they're like, we're going to do the best we can. She's on bed rest, she can't move. So he eventually came at 31 weeks. They kept him cooking for 5 more weeks. Rosalie lived at not Metro, excuse me, at Fairview. Luckily, we lived close to Fairview at the time and didn't have any other children, so I would go to work and I'd go right to the hospital and I'd hang with her. My sister or somebody would go take care of our dog. I mean, Ro was basically like you hear about bed rest. It was like hardcore bed rest for 5 weeks. They eventually started letting her, she could get up and use the bathroom and shower and stuff once they kind of slowed things down and felt comfortable with that. Um, but yeah, so for 5 weeks we basically lived there in the high risk OB.
So obviously, 31 weeks still is in no way like out of the woods. Like we know like we talked like Jay's eldest Lily was a preemie, but like
Mhm.
not to that extent, right? Jay was like
He was
5 weeks.
35, yeah, 35 weeks.
Yeah. So like what for people who don't understand, like first off, like the whole process, and we're some people will listen and have had children and have gone through like labor and delivery, and they're like, yeah, it is, we get it, but like people who haven't,
Mhm.
like just labor and delivery in general is like bananas how incredibly talented these people are and everything they're doing, and like
Oh
all
yeah.
of the like how they keep calm, but like what like so at 31 weeks, what was your guys' experience? Like you've already spent 5 weeks basically living in the hospital. I imagine you guys did not go home anytime soon after 31 weeks, right?
Well, Ro and I did.
Well,
um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah. Side note story about Fairview's NICU. A friend of mine had a baby there at like 28 weeks, 29 weeks. And I mean, I went to visit her and she was like a Barbie doll. It was crazy. And they were in there for a long time. And he would bring the NICU nurses donuts every year on her birthday. And on her fifth birthday, he texted me knowing that we were across the hall at High Risk OB saying, "Hey, I brought the nurses donuts. Why don't you come over and grab one or I can come and see you in Row?" And I said, "Row's water broke. Stuff's getting real. It's going down today." So he was born on her fifth birthday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was, a whole bunch of people in the room, all kinds of nurses and doctors. And Ro is a champ. She works hard. Eamon's born, and it was like this, and whoosh, it was gone.
Hmm.
And I it'd be interesting if you ever convinced Ro to come on and talk because we live the same thing, but I'm sure have completely different perspectives and traumas over over the experiences. But I think that was really hard to be in there 5 weeks and then to go through her first labor and then not to get that time with him once he was here. Um, Back to the room, we wait like 3-4 hours before they're finally like, okay, you can come and see him. So once we got to see him, then he's in an incubator and we couldn't
Hmm.
hold him. um, so there was a lot of like steps that we had to go through along the way and kind of process it. But he was in for 3 weeks total, which was actually pretty quick. They tell you to basically not get your hopes up, to plan on being there until they would have been 40 weeks.
Hmm.
So, they kind of prepped us for being in there for 9 weeks. But so he was born at 3 pounds, 13 ounces, never needed oxygen. So all those steroids worked.
Wow.
So he was breathing on his own, good to go, was a good eater, had a feeding tube for a little bit, but um, it was very uneventful for him in the NICU. He just kind of chilled, didn't go through a lot of craziness, just a lot of bells and whistles hooked up to him. But being a first time parent and sitting in there with all those bells and whistles and other tiny babies around you, it was very stressful. And Ro, God love her, my dad would take her up. I still went to work because we didn't want to use my vacation or like
Hmm.
paternity until the baby he was actually home.
Yeah.
So I would go to work. My dad would come and pick Rosalie up and take her to the hospital, and she'd stay there all day with them. I'd come home after work with some food, or we'd eat in the cafeteria and stay there till they kicked us out at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, whenever it was. So it was another long 3 weeks. So eight weeks of the whole ordeal. um, Pretty stressful, but like you talked about, the professionals there are insane. You know how helpful they are, caring. It was really amazing the care that Rosalie and Eamon both got during the whole experience.
One of the things we've talked about is how you don't get an instruction manual when you go home with this baby. And if there was a silver lining to this being in the NICU, I think it's that, like, I remember when Lily was in the NICU, which again, like, it was like she was born and then a month later, less than a month later, you guys were there at the same hospital, same NICU. You're learning to change diapers and in some cases maybe like wash your baby with like putting your hands into tubes in
Mhm.
gloves. I'm just curious, did you feel like when you got home it was almost like terrible analogy, but like swinging with a donut on the bat where it's like, wow, now that I've gone through this, it's just easy? Or did you not even know the difference because this is my first baby and who knows?
Um, I was terrified. um, the first 3 weeks he's in there in the NICU, and I know his breaths, I know his heartbeat, I know everything. And now they're just like, okay, here, your baby's good, take him home. And I'm like, no, he was just hooked up to all these monitors, and now I have to go home and like, not sleep, just stare at him all night. Um, so, but you learn pretty quick, and they're very resilient, when they're that age. Um, And we fumbled through it, and he turned out okay, I think.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
do want to ask you in a second about, how he, like his journey of in life, and I also want to hear kind of how this contrasted with Declan. Before we get there, though, I wanted to just ask, like, I for whatever reason, like, vividly remember Ro having to be on FaceTime for your baby shower, and I was just curious. So, what? Tell us a little bit about the stuff that you missed during that 5 weeks that you were there. It was just such a unique situation, and to your point, I think you both handled it like absolute champions. But from your perspective, how did that impact the things that parents talk about? Like we talked again on the podcast, should the dad be at the baby shower? For you, it was like I am the only
Mhm.
parent here, and I'm FaceTiming my wife so that she doesn't feel like she totally missed out on this. Can you just talk a little bit about that experience of the stuff that you missed during that 5 weeks?
Yeah, that was a rough day. I remember when you guys were talking on one of the earlier podcasts about being there. It made me think about our baby shower, and my plan, at least, and maybe Ro will tell you, is different. But our baby shower was at Big Met Golf Course, right on the pavilion there. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm gonna go play the front nine, say hi to everybody while you guys are there. I'll play the back nine, and then I'll be cleaning up and packing up gifts. So it works out perfect. But yeah, we thought that we were gonna get the doctors to give us the thumbs up to sneak away for a day, and they wouldn't do it at the end. And again, that was another really rough day where the things that first time mothers look forward to, that to get photos of their big belly when that baby's ready to come out, and the baby shower with all their friends and family, um, and not being able to be there for that when everybody did all this planning and all this fun work. And I sat there and I was kind of in a daze, like it was just opening gifts. And I was like, oh, look, another thing for a baby. And then,
Hmm.
oh, another thing for a baby. And it was just, it was a blur. And then I just remember taken all the food back up that was left over, and Rosalie and her dad were there, and the nurses, and we just gave them the cake and the food. Another crazy thing about that day is my grandfather was a Cleveland police officer, and his badge was 111, and I was in and out of that hospital multiple times a day. And on the day of the baby shower, I walked out, and there was a police car right in the emergency area, and it was car number 111. And it was the only time in all those days that I ever saw that car. And I was like, okay, I got this. We're going to be okay today. And like, it was just, the universe telling you something. But yeah, it's weird how certain things pop in your head. But yeah, it was a tough day for sure.
I just weirdly, because you brought that up about the car. When Alex was in recovery, because she had they told us, because she had had such a long rough labor, that they gave us a recovery room with two beds. I don't think that's why they actually did it. I think it was just the one that we got, but I also got a bed, which was amazing. But at the bottom of the beds there was like a this bed needs to be serviced by, like, specific date, and hers said 11/25, which is her birthday, and the other bed said 1/26, which is my birthday. And it was like one of those moments where we were like,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna figure this out. Well, I don't know
Yep.
what any of this means, but yeah, it's crazy, the things like that stop you and you're like, okay, you know what,
We're good.
we're good. This is a weird, insane moment, but it's all gonna be okay. Yeah, that's wild. Jay, you had another question. I didn't want to cut you off there.
Oh, I think it's so, Pat and I talk, so I obviously know that both boys are doing great. Um, but I just, first of all, I want to like tell our listeners how Eamon's life maybe has been a little bit different than Declan's, if it really has, if you've noticed that at all. You guys have been great advocates in the preemie community. Uh, you've always been, since obviously, he was in there. But I'm just curious, in terms of, have you noticed anything different with the way they progress, and just the update? Like, to me, you'd never know about him anything at all. He's an eighth grader. He's probably a pain in the butt sometimes, and
Big time.
just like Lily is. So that, and then if you don't mind talking a little bit about how things went with Declan.
Sure. Yeah, so really the only time we saw or had to kind of pause ourselves was in that first year or so. Everybody's excited. Oh, my baby rolled over, crawled, walked, did all this. And you kind of got to tell yourself, like, he's -2 months right now. So he's not going to be doing what a baby that was born at their due date at 40 weeks is. So
Hmm.
um, I think he probably didn't sleep all the way through the night, or at least a good chunk through the night until he was like 5 or 6 months or something like that. So multiple times up. He's small baby's got to eat more. So that was the big thing, is just making sure he's hitting the milestones, but kind of at a delayed, timeline, his own timeline. But other than that, I mean, he talked pretty early. He's a super smart kid, very active. I no one would ever know unless he broadcasted or saw one of our Facebook posts when we do our March of Babies walk for March of Dimes. That's usually coming up here in May. So I'll give you guys a shout out for the podcast. You can plug me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, 8th grade, pain in the butt, loves basketball. He's out there 2 hours a day shooting, and you'd never know. So it's just like I said, they're resilient, and it's amazing. Um, then we
Also,
have
super fast cross country runner.
super fast. He just got his cross country work for the summer, and he's going to be a busy boy running, because it's actually a class for a grade. He doesn't take gym; he takes cross country.
Oh
I
my
think
gosh.
they I think they do that because they take football so serious down here. They can actually, give people a football class so they can study playbook during class and stuff. I don't know. It's Texas, man.
Smart, very
Yeah.
smart.
But yeah, so just under 2 years after Eamon, we had Declan, and it was a completely different experience. We didn't find out until we did a gender reveal party. So since Roe missed out on baby shower the first time, at least we were able to have some cake and a celebration this time around. Um, they didn't know what happened with the first pregnancy, or why she went into labor so soon. So they did take some precautions. She started getting some shots, like around the 30-week mark or 25-week, I forget. Steroids shots again, just to make sure lungs were okay if something happened. And they did a procedure called a cerclage, which kind of just reinforces the cervix, so that any pressure that shouldn't get things moving doesn't. And Declan was born, I want to say, a day after his due date. So he went full term in a day. And he was 9 pounds and 10 ounces. And again, Roe is, yeah, right. So Roe holds the record for the smallest and biggest babies in our family. Um, and, Roe's a champ at labor. And they put that baby right on her at the end, and it was just like this calming effect that she missed out on that first time. And I just watched it like, oh my God, that is real. Like, that tummy time right off the
Hmm.
rip is a real thing. And um, Declan, again, a pain in the butt, but a 6th grade pain in the butt. Wrestles, does a lot of Lego stuff. Typical 6th grader. So both are doing really good.
That's amazing. That like, yeah, I get it. When Wren was born, with it being like an unplanned C-section, we were laughing because like they did the look, human, you did it.
Yeah, you made
Um,
this.
yeah, she didn't scream at all at first, which was almost disconcerting, but not like they weren't like, oh no, look, like she was very much away. It was like, why did you? I was comfortable. What are you doing? Like there was never like, oh, is she okay? But you're right. Like she started fussing, and then they put her down on Alex, and it's just like chill
Yeah,
immediately, and it's like they call it a golden hour for a reason. It's like literally magic. You're just sitting there, you're like everything is going through your body, and then you watch that, and you're like, oh wow, this stuff is surreal. It's
yeah,
incredible. It's so cool. I'm so glad you guys got to experience it. The second time around, that everyone's obviously doing great now. It's amazing.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing the story. I really do think that it's something that a lot of dads, especially if they've never heard of a story like that, they don't know, if they're going through it, they probably feel like they're going through it by themselves. And just being able to hear somebody else tell what their experience was, and that you can come out of this okay, is, I would hope, comforting to some. So really appreciate that. And we would love for you to stick around after the break and talk about some dad stuff with us if you're open to it.
yeah. Absolutely, that'd be great.
Well,
Awesome.
thanks again to our good buddy Pat, and we will be right back. Bumper music.
And bumper music. Real quick, just I should have told you guys this ahead of time. It records like on your end, so it's all gonna look really nice and clean. Like, cause Jay is really choppy for me right now. I don't know if he's choppy for you, Pat.
He is.
Yeah, so it'll look really nice and clean. I should have told you that ahead of time. So anyway, okay, we're back. Jay, who is this week's sponsor? We haven't done the first part of the episode yet to have made up something funny.
I think it's got to be Cleveland Clinic Fairview Hospital.
Yeah, right.
And the Big Bet. If you want to golf during your wife's baby shower, Big Met. I think that's what they say.
They
Okay.
say that, and probably
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like Athens Pizza should be
Oh my
Athena's.
gosh.
Athens.
Athens pizza. Pizza in
I
Texas
don't
is
know
not
what
good.
is.
It's all chains.
Okay. Where is this Athena's Pizza? Athens.
Athens, right over by our old house in Cleveland. There's one on Rocky River Drive in Purtis, and I think there's
Oh,
one on Denison as well. But it is my
okay.
favorite.
Well,
When I'm back in town, it's a go-to.
okay. Well, while we're talking about pizza places, we had Jets Pizza this past week.
Mm.
This is apropos of nothing, but it's Detroit style, and it's like the real cheese on the sides. Anyway, welcome back to Pizza Talk. All right, so every episode we end with some dad stuff, the tech and different things that we enjoy using and have been using lately with our kids. Pat, you have the honor. What is something that you use with your boys that you really you like it? Whatever, it can be literally anything.
Well, maybe I'll get you another sponsor, but Declan is big into the Crunch Lab boxes. They're a little engineering kit that comes every month that they put together, and sometimes they're battery powered or there's some circuitry and mechanisms and everything they have to do. And he literally waits, he almost has it down to the day, like it's coming today, I know it. And it's built within the hour, and he's running around the house playing with it and showing it off. So that's a cool one. It's a cool little subscription and box they get in the mail. So Crunch Labs.
Is
That's
that
awesome.
Mark Rober? Yeah, that dude
Yep.
is super smart and engaging. Adam, you have no idea who we're talking about?
I don't.
Check him out on
Was it the
YouTube.
face was it the face I was making, or just my lack of reaction at all? Was it one of those two things?
Or both.
Or
All of the
both?
above? Yeah.
Yeah.
Check out his squirrel obstacle course in his backyard.
Oh, I do know who this person is. I'm familiar with the squirrel obstacle course. Not the other stuff, not the crunch box, but the squirrels. Um, During the pandemic, our dad put a bunch of nuts out for squirrels, and like not peanuts. Like he was putting out like pistachios and walnuts, and talking about which ones that the squirrels loved more. And I was like, oh, people. This is how this happens. You get that bored. I get it. Jay, what's your dad's stuff?
Well, first, Pat, do you have any other stuff you'd
Oh,
like to talk
yes,
about?
please.
Okay, we don't want
To,
to
to we'll kick it old fashioned. We've been fishing a lot lately. We have two ponds in our neighborhood, catch and release. So to step away from the electronics and the Roblox and Fortnite and all that, it's like, all right, we got to get outside, guys. So shooting hoops and fishing. So
That's good. That's good dad stuff right there.
absolutely.
That's
That is
awesome.
good. That is good dad stuff. So we haven't recorded the first part of this yet, so I don't know if we've talked about it. But I was gonna just mention a couple dad stuff things around travel. We recently went for 2.5 days with the younger two kids to Chicago, and we'll put it in the show notes unless I forget, then we won't. But Sky, who's 4, we have this harness that you can put into any Uber, and it basically becomes like a car seat, so it goes like over him and keeps him safe. But it just like pops into the seatbelt in any Uber, and has been like a game changer for not having to figure out how to travel with a car seat. And then Eliza, who's 6, she doesn't use the harness, but we have a blow up booster seat that you literally like blow into it and blow it up, and it takes less than 30 seconds. And again, keeps her safe, so she can have the seat belt and that booster seat. Those two things are like game changers for travel for us. And then the last thing is we have this inflatable air mattress that you pump by hand that takes probably 3 or 4 minutes. It's a little bit of a workout, but deflates within seconds. You can put it on the floor of any hotel room. And so Eliza gets her own bed, and Sky gets his own bed, this little air mattress, and then it folds up really, really small and fits into a suitcase really nicely, so not taking up a lot of space. But those those travel things, the harness, the inflatable booster seat, and the inflatable air mattress that take up like no room, have been huge for us, especially as we are now a family of five, and sometimes you can find two beds plus a sofa bed pull out, but you can't find an additional bed. And so instead of paying for another room, we just have this air mattress. It's pretty sweet.
Those are good things.
Yeah.
They are good things.
Huh. Nice. Um, Mine, more newborn centric, as you may expect. There's an app that Alex discovered called Wonder Weeks, and something that you learn when you have a newborn, and I'm sure you guys went through as well, is like you think just when you think you're getting into a good flow of like, oh, they're sleeping like 4 or 5 hours, they're eating really well. Wow, what a happy baby! All of a sudden, they're just furious, and you can't figure out why. Well, what happens is newborns every couple weeks go through what they call leaps, where like they like like their cognizant like their cognizance cognition, their brain is growing. And so like when they hit like 4 to 5 weeks, they go through a leap where they basically start perceiving things for the first time, and it's like quite literally blows their mind. So they get crabby and angry at you. And then at like week 7, they start understanding patterns. And again, like a pattern like words in succession, or like seeing 3 dots and like they can pick up on what a pattern is, and it blows their mind again. So they get crabby. And so this Wonder Weeks app just shows you like based on how old your child is, it'll tell you like, hey, a leap is coming, and then it'll play you this like 2-minute cartoon video that explains to you like, here's what's happening in your baby's brain, here's why they might be a little sassafras, here's what's going on, here's how you can help them, like here's the like different types of high contrast things you can use that'll best help. So it's a free app. I having played with it, I can't understand how it's free because it's so cool. But the Wonder Weeks app for like newborns is really cool to have a better idea of like, why isn't she napping all of a sudden when last night she wouldn't sleep either? What's going on? So very cool. Highly recommend it. Even if you don't have a baby, the cartoons are really fun.
The next time Ro's in a mood, instead of asking her why she's crabby, I'm going to ask her if her brain is growing.
Are you going through a leap, bro?
It's funny that it used to be called, well, like sleep regression. Everybody knows that, but there's another word that I can't think of right now, but is now like turned into it's a leap.
Yeah, I mean, sleep regression is still very much a thing that people say, but knock on wood, Wren is at time of recording last night. We put her down at 8:30. I had to wake her up at 2:30 to feed her, and then she slept till like 6:30 after that. So she's a good sleeper so far. Again, we have done nothing to foster that, and we just got lucky. So
That's the universe trying to get you to have number 2. Well, first one was no problem, right? Now, I don't know
well,
why. That wasn't in
yeah,
my case. I don't know what the universe was telling me, but
yeah. They call that a trick baby for all of
yeah.
us. For you, they were like, well, it certainly can't be this traumatic second time around. Do it again.
Try it again.
Yeah. Jay, anything else you'd like to cover?
I don't think so. Just another thank you to our good buddy, and I think we should do this again.
I agree. This was fun. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Pat. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. And as Jay would like to say, we've been great.